Dr. Park, can we move from spirits and ghosts? We will certainly keep an eye on that. Albert's our colleague will keep an eye on that. But you're also deputy ranking on the Education Committee of Parliament. So appropriately, I could ask you questions related to sex for grades. Can I?
Yes, Mama B, you are right. Even if I was not on the Education Committee, you would have had every reason to ask me, given that I've spent some time as a lecturer on various campuses across the world. So I think that it is a very fair question to ask.
Okay, so let me ask you what is coming out of the University of Ghana, Legon, the documentary produced by the BBC, is strange to you in any way?
Well, first of all, let me say that many of us have had a chance to see the documentary. And if we are to base the content of the documentary on the title, in some of the instances that we saw in the clip, you cannot make a direct link between what is defined as sex for grades and some of the pronouncements that some of the lecturers captured in that video made. But be as it may, the issue of sex for grades is a global phenomenon that is affecting teaching and learning on campuses across the globe. I think what we should be looking at is how to encourage those who are victims to come forward and to file complaints to the appropriate, if you like, committees set up to deal with these kinds of matters on their campuses, and to make sure that there are also severe punitive actions that will be meted out to lecturers who may seek to exploit, particularly female students, because they want to satisfy their bodily pleasure. But you must understand that every institution of higher learning has a code of conduct, there are statutes, and indeed there are ethics to every profession. And it is a no-no. It is unacceptable anywhere, anytime, for even a lecturer to have an amorous relationship with his or her student. And so I think that in the wake of the BBC documentary and the conversation that it has generated and the reaction that the University of Ghana has shown is the right thing to do, because the university must now move on to activate its internal mechanism to probe and investigate. I would say not just the lecturers implicated in the documentary, but to open it up for students and other members of the university community who may have been victims of sexual harassment generally, or much more specifically, this component of, sex for grades, to come forward and to provide that evidence for the needed remedial and punitive actions to be taken. So I welcome the public debate on this, and I certainly think that the reaction of the University of Ghana is in the right direction.
I know that you're on recess, but is this something that the committee in Parliament's education will be interested in looking at, and which angle would you be looking at?
Yes, indeed, we are on recess, and I think this is a matter that should capture the attention of the Parliamentary Subcommittee on Education. By our mandate, any and everything that has implications for the educational sector, anything that can impede or stifle teaching and learning, should be of concern to us. And in this matter, clearly, I think that we should take it up as a committee, among many other issues that have come up since we went on recess. And I make references to the comprehensive sexuality education issue. There are a number of teacher unions which are also up in arms. TUTAG, for example, is currently on an indefinite strike. Now, we also know that the basic schools are yet to receive the appropriate material for effective teaching and learning based on the new curriculum, which they have not received yet. So there are a number of issues that I believe the committee should be looking at when we resume. And I think that this issue of sex for grades must also be one that should be topical on the agenda of the Education Committee.
Okay. One last thing. You're familiar with the makeup of the University of Ghana. Last night on PM Express, chairperson of the Committee of Anti-Sexual Harassment Committee of the University of Ghana called on students, including old students who may have experienced any form of sexual harassment, to come forward. This is turning out to be like a Me Too kind of movement. Do you think that we have enough structures in terms of protection for these women and girls who decide to come forward, and even how to handle this whole case? Are we prepared for this?
Well, it all depends on the weight we place on this very age-old challenge. And I say age-old because even when some of us were at the university, we were getting rumors about these kinds of things going on, but we, thought that perhaps these were just rumors. But given what I know now, it is indeed something that bedevils academic institutions of higher learning across the globe.
When you say what you know now, are you saying that you didn't see any real hardcore evidence until the BBC decided to do this documentary? I mean, we've heard many stories.
Yes, I've heard stories, but it is one thing hearing a story, and it is one thing getting some type of evidence to support the story that you are being told. And that is why I think the BBC's work has now brought the issue to the fore, so that even if we say that on the face of it, sex of grace is condemnable, on the face of it, we cannot make a direct linkage. We can still agree that there is some serious level of misconduct based on the university statutes and the relationships that can exist, and those that are prohibited between a lecturer and a student. So what I am saying is that we have to put in place a mechanism, first of all, to encourage our students to come forward and to put in place a mechanism to allow them to be protected and to be counseled. Because in these kinds of matters, and given the type of society in which we live, most times the victims become victimized because of the setup that we deal with. And so we must be prepared to make sure that we put in place the needed architecture so that when they come forward and they provide the evidence, one, they are protected, and two, they get some type of counseling to prepare them to be able to handle the fallout and even perhaps the backlash. But I think that this is something that we can do, and I think we should do. It is about time that we do this so that young girls will be free and be able to study hard as they do and be able to get the grades that they deserve, not because of their bodies or not because somebody is drooling over their beauty, but because they have the brains and competence and they have worked hard to earn the grades that they deserve.
Just real quick, Dr. Park, isn't there the tendency that one lecturer would let another lecturer know that this lady came forward, and then they would victimize the person, for no reason, just simply because you are my friend as a lecturer? We're all colleagues, and somebody's pointing a finger at you, so I have to victimize you.
Well, I doubt that. I doubt. I mean, I've lectured at the university before. I certainly would never have condoned this. I definitely would always condemn what is unethical and what is against the rules and regulations. And largely because this thing has become so public, I don't see that happening. And that is why I said earlier on that it's important that the university put in place the right structure. It's not just sufficient to open up and say that former students and current students who have been victims of this despicable, behavior should come forward. We must put in place the needed, protective guidelines and mechanisms to ensure that they don't become victimized the second time. And that is exactly why I think the building blocks and the structures must be properly set before the processes commence.
Okay. All right, sir. Thank you very much from talking about the Fumbisi Senior High School issue to this current issue of Sex for Grades, that documentary produced by the BBC. We thank Dr. Clement Apag very much. He is a deputy ranking member on the Education Committee of Parliament. So let's bring in the conversation on PM Express last night. I made reference to the Sexual Committee, Dr. Margaret Amwakohene. So let's take a listen to her.
Dr. Makuhene, let's come back to the substantive issues now. This has emerged on a very powerful international medium, and there's almost a view out there that it's an indictment on the work that you've done over the years, and the university as well, that the revelations means something was fundamentally wrong with the university's approach to dealing with this particular matter. What do you say to that perception?
I totally disagree with that. And it's based on the fact that we've done a lot of work. And we are not presupposing that having issues with behavior in an organization is something that is restricted to the University of Ghana. I mean, this is something you find almost everywhere. And what the university has done is to be proactive. And so we have a policy since 2010, and even before that, there were attempts. I mean, Sigensa is one of the things that actually began this whole thing about having a policy that looks to people who are vulnerable and how to protect those people. And since 2010, there's a policy, which was revised in 2015. In 2010, when the policy came into being, it was just the sexual harassment policy. But within the 5 years of its operation the first time, it was noticed that some of the issues that came before the committee were not neatly sexual harassment, but they could be labeled as misconduct. So when it was revised, it said introduce misconduct. So then it became sexual harassment and misconduct committee, policy. And then the committee is anti-sexual harassment and misconduct committee. And so we have been doing a lot of work, but there's always room for improvement, and there's always a way of ensuring that you've opened up the system enough to admit more people. For instance, each time students come to campus, apart from the orientation, we email to them copies of the policy. Now the question is to ask how many of them actually access the policy and read. I don't know. And we keep informing them that there is this committee that can provide you with help if you need help. And we have all the numbers, and we tell you all the contacts that you should approach and all that. So there is really a limitation on human effort in whatever endeavor you want to
We spoke to some of the students who tell us that they simply are not aware that this even exists.
But if you post something to the person, if you email something to the person, and the person does not read it, how will the person become aware? And we are talking about a university system. In a university setting, reading must be one of the most fundamental things that we should have. And if the person is not reading, and they will prefer to listen to their friends and take decisions that really may not be the best decisions to take. And in fact, apart from the committee, we also have, the tutorial system is really founded on things like this, that you have a father or mother figure in the halls for you to approach. And so the tutorial system is basically about this. And you're supposed to meet with your the tutor is supposed to meet with his or her tutees. The tutees are supposed to meet with their tutor. In fact, I know some tutors even go to the extent of going to the halls, knocking at doors to just introduce themselves and say, how are you doing? Okay? And so we have been doing a lot as a university to ensure that our students live and work or study in a very congenial atmosphere.
How are you dealing with the fear of victimization? Because that will put a lot of people off coming to you. They're dealing with lecturers here, and there's a lot of perception out there that Ghanaian lecturers sometimes can do that to you, so women will not come forward. Well, how do you deal with that?
By giving them assurances.
Okay.
We give them assurances. And in fact, in extreme cases where the student says that I go to the class and I feel intimidated, fortunately for us, especially at the undergraduate level, you have courses that are split into about 2 or 3. So you move from lecturer A to lecturer B, which is a possibility. In cases where the student has said that I was making A's until this man started making advances, starting at making a C, your script, the entire script, is taken out of his hand, given to somebody else to grade. And so they are protected. Because, you know, when the person knows that the spotlight is on me for all the negative reasons, they tend to be more cautious. But if you have not reported them, then they go on doing what they want to do. And you are the victim and you continue being victimized.
And that's chairperson of the Committee on Anti-Sexual Harassment at the University of Ghana, Legon. Also speaking on PM Express was Minister of State in charge of tertiary education, Professor Kwesi Yankah, who asked the university to ensure that students are adequately briefed on sexual harassment issues the moment they enroll.
Our tertiary education, and it just reinforces the same stereotypes over and over and over again. It doesn't mean that what they are saying is not necessarily true, but it's always keyword to ensure that the better side of our higher education goes unreported, and a greater emphasis put on the negative. It doesn't mean that it's not important. Just to say that, as Dr. Makuhene is saying, it is not the BBC documentary that compelled the University of Ghana to start a sexual harassment policy. This has been known for several years now. And so perhaps it's just a reminder and a wake-up call for all of us to make sure that we're on the right track when it comes to morality and integrity in higher education.
You say that, but the question others have asked is, has the policy that has been implemented over the past, has it been adequate enough to make a huge dent in the problem?
Which policy are you talking about?
I'm talking about the anti-sexual harassment policy. In fact, I learned that as part of the government policy, you've made it a requirement for the accreditation of tertiary institutions, correct?
Absolutely. The policy, the tertiary education policy that we recently launched contains ample information and directives that would guide tertiary education institutions to ensure that the environment that they create for learning and teaching, that environment is safe and secure for all students, but particularly the weaker sex. And also to ensure that our target of installing 50-50 parity in enrollment is reached. Currently, we are operating at a 41% female participation in tertiary. But it's not good enough considering the strides that the University of Ghana is making, and the average 41 in terms of female enrollment. Not just enrollment, but enrollment, retention, and graduation. Enrolling female students, ensuring that we retain them and then do not color the environment and compel them to leave before the time for graduation. So they perform the best of them without any intimidation.
And that's Professor Kwesi Yankah. We'll bring you a playback of PM Express right after the AM show when we wrap up at 9.